So this one comes from Shannon, who happens to be my boss. He did not know he was asking a Dear Andy question. I texted him later and let him know. You just asked a Dear Andy question. But Shannon Terry, founder of On3, was responding to the Reggie Bush news. And he said, the best high school football highlight tape of all time, ? And that ignited a debate online. That ignited a debate about who had the best high school highlight tape. And I have thoughts on this because obviously I'm right in the wheelhouse. I was in my early 20s when YouTube was created. You guys who are younger, you guys who are in your 20s now, have no concept of what it was like when suddenly we could watch these high school players that we'd heard about or that we'd read about in magazines or on the internet. Okay, we got to start with a little bit of the history of recruiting and how it used to work. In the 90s, if you wanted recruiting news, you had to call a 1-900 number. Like, you got charged $2.95 a minute. And they'd be like, yeah, this dude's going to Nebraska. This dude's going to Ohio State. And these are like commitments, which you couldn't just look it up on the internet. And you didn't really know who these dudes were, but you maybe had a copy of Super Prep, or you maybe had a copy of Tom Lemming's magazine. And so you might have seen a picture and you might have read some stats, but you didn't know anything about them. The turn of the century brings the internet recruiting era into existence. And Shannon Terry, the guy who asked this question, has a lot to do with that. So he buys Rivals out of bankruptcy and builds it up into a bigger company. And they kind of pioneered how all this works, the ranking of recruits. And then you had Huddle was created, which now teams use to share film, players use to share film. All of this stuff didn't exist. And so when these videos started coming onto YouTube, it was like manna from heaven. If you were a football nerd, to be able to see this person who lived 3,000 miles away from you playing football, like moving on screen. And remember, early on, this is the dial-up era. Like, you're waiting on these videos. It's incredible to think about. And so I ranked my top 10. And I'll tell you, there's a couple that I was disappointed that I couldn't include. There were some amazing ones. Like, there's a guy named Jeff Luck. And people from Florida of a certain age know who Jeff Luck is. Cincinnati fans, I think, also know who Jeff Luck is. Jeff Luck was a linebacker at Treasure Coast High School in the late aughts. He had a highlight tape where the first 3 plays were him making people explode. He was a linebacker, and it was just, whoa. Now, he's also proof of why you can't just go by a highlight tape. You need to see a full game. Because Jeff Luck signed with Florida State. He was actually a very important signee for Florida State because he was a big-time recruit in the state of Florida in his year. I believe it was 2010 was his recruiting year. And him committing to Florida State helped a lot of other people decide to commit to Florida State. And a lot of the building blocks of the 2013 national title team were signing with Florida State, in part because Jeff Luck was signing with Florida State. Now, he had transferred out to Cincinnati by then. The problem with Jeff Luck is he wasn't super flexible, probably should have been playing D tackle, probably wasn't a linebacker. And so it didn't work. But he ended up playing at Cincinnati and playing well. He played in Canada. So he had a career, but he was a legend. So he just missed the cut. But we'll start number 10. And this one, I actually had a little bit of a hard time with because I feel like it's a little too slick because it's later in the time. And then it's also in Texas where everything was sort of, the technology was more advanced. All the game, all their games are on TV if they're playing at a big school by this point. So it's like in HD. Like, it's really weird not watching the grainy footage. But I went Kyler Murray, Allen High School, number 10. And Kyler Murray looked in high school exactly what you would imagine him looking like. Nobody could touch him. Nobody. This dude was undefeated in high school. He was just electrifying. So This is just the highlight tape is like 20 minutes of him dodging people and then uncorking these unbelievable throws. It's pretty impressive. But again, like the HD of it all throws me off because I came up in the era of grainy, like sometimes VHS put onto YouTube. But it was really fun to watch and definitely predicted what was going to happen in the future. My number 9, now this is one that was before the YouTube era, and somebody went back and found it and put it on YouTube. But this one's incredible. So this is a guy who played at Bethel High School in Hampton, Virginia. The real ones know who I'm talking about. They're like, wait a second. Is this not a football player? Well, he was a football player back then. He just happened to grow into one of the best NBA point guards ever. Allen Iverson was a dog on the football field. A dog. So he was a quarterback, DB, kick returner. And I am convinced that if Allen Iverson had never played baseball, or never played basketball, he would have been an all-pro safety, corner, you name it. Because he could lay the wood. He could cover. He had incredible ball skills. He had incredible instincts with the ball in his hand. He would have been probably a punt returner. He was amazing. Like you can tell that this guy would be incredible at any sport he ever played. But now I kind of want the alternate history where Allen Iverson was an all-time great DB, because I think that's what he would have been. All right, number 8. We go to Yulee High School, just north of Jacksonville in Nassau County, Florida. Derrick Henry. You want to see a man playing among boys? Watch Derrick Henry. It's like watching a Coke machine run through people. He was massive. He was as big then as he is now. I did a story when I was at SI the year that Derrick Henry won the Heisman, where I went back and talked to the kids who were on his high school football team, who played on the scout team on his high school football team, who had to try to tackle him. And I remember one of them telling me it was like grabbing onto a freight train. You just held on and went for the ride. Like he would carry them as far as he wanted to carry them and then set them down while still holding on to the ball. Derrick Henry was incredible. The other thing is he had like 40 carries a game in high school. Like there was no worry about tread on the tires. Derrick Henry has been a cyborg for his entire life. Here's another one that was unearthed later. But if you've seen this clip going around, and it's been passed around on social media for a long time now, John Elway at Granada Hills High School. So this is in the 70s. And he looks like he is coming from the future. Like this is the 70s when he's making these throws. This does not look like an offense that you would have seen in the 70s. And obviously, he goes on to become one of the greatest players of all time. But nobody could do this stuff back then. It's unbelievable. We now move to a guy who played at high school, one of my favorite high school team nicknames in America. In Baltimore, Dunbar High School, the Poets. Tavon Austin was a Dunbar Poet. Tavon Austin did not get tackled. I'm not sure he got tackled once in high school. If you go and watch the full clip of Tavon Austin, there's so many plays where he is so fast and so far ahead of everybody else on the field. He has run by every single person on the defense. He's just looking back and waiting for people. He's like, where did everybody go? Just spectacular. Just juking everybody. Not the best juke film I watched. Now, the best juke film I watched didn't make the list, but it came close. Rock Thomas, who played running back at Auburn, go look at his highlight tape because he's juke. There's a play where he jukes all 11 guys on the defense, but that still doesn't compare to Tavon Austin. Tavon with the Dunbar Poets was unstoppable. Speaking of unstoppable, Madison High School in Houston, early 2000s. Vince Young. Vince Young at Madison High School looked exactly like Vince Young at Texas. Bigger than everybody else, faster than everybody else. No chance. Like, think about this. Like, USC guys couldn't tackle Vince Young in the Rose Bowl. How was a high school kid going to have a chance? Because he's basically the same guy that you're going to see in the Rose Bowl in a few years. And these poor kids are just bouncing off of Vince Young. I can't even imagine. I met Vince Young in person, and I covered that USC Texas Rose Bowl, but I met Vince Young in person a few years later, and just remember walking up to him like, how on earth did anyone ever tackle you? He's massive, and he was that big in high school. We're talking 6'5", like 230, 240. Probably heavier than that when he was at Texas. Unbelievable. We're going to stay in Metro Houston for number 4, though. And this is one of those ways you can tell a diehard sicko college football fan. If they've seen this highlight tape, you know you're among your people. You are among the right people, the people who dive deep into these things, who were probably trying to get that Reggie Bush highlight tape that we were talking about, like when you couldn't find it anywhere. But this is the one. This is the one that blew up the internet. This is the dawn of the YouTube era. YouTube's been around. When this comes out, YouTube's been around. It's existed for about 3 years, but it is just entering mainstream consciousness. Everybody's just getting high-speed internet in their houses. And this one just explodes. It is, of course, Sam McGuffie, Cy-Fair High School, Cypress, Texas. I just remember seeing this, the third play of Sam McGuffie's high school highlight film. I screamed. Like, I screamed when I saw it. First two are nice runs where he finds a hole, jukes some people. The third one, he just jumps a guy, like hurdles him like he's not even there. It spawned imitators. At the All-Star games, he was asked to recreate it. My favorite clip, and I tried to find it, I think it's been scrubbed from the internet, is these two guys, and I think they were in Texas as well. And they're just in their backyard, and they're trying to hurdle each other with a football. And every time they jump, they go, McGuffie! Sam McGuffie went to Michigan. Actually played really well as a freshman at Michigan. Could have done well there. Had to go home. Had a situation where he needed to get home to Houston. Wound up transferring to Rice. Had a decent career. Became an Olympic bobsledder. Like, was in the Olympics for the United States as a bobsledder. And then you can look on YouTube. Like 7 or 8 years ago, when he's 25 years old, he made an audition tape for American Ninja Warrior. He could still do all that stuff. All of it. Turnwater football in the chat. Fotuliatu in Washington had the highest viewed huddle highlights in history for some time. That's an interesting one. And it reminds me of a guy who also just missed this list, Vita Vea. If you watch Vita Vea's high school highlights, a lot of him playing running back. A lot of Vita Vea at running back. And it's, whew, you talk about poor kids trying to make tackles. He was 300 pounds already at that point. It was pretty awesome. Now we get into the God tier, the top 3. These are the greatest 3. These are the ones that people could never stop watching. Noel Devine, North Fort Myers High. I will accept these in any order. If you think my order's wrong and Noel Devine should be number 1 or number 2, I get it. I understand. Noel Devine was absolutely electrifying. When this hit the internet, people in Florida lost their minds because this is the guy playing against very good competition in Southwest Florida. And there was no one who could come close to him. No one. And Noel Devine wound up being a very good running back at West Virginia. But you'll never see dominance like this. People just grasping air the entire time. He was impossible to tackle. Number 2, The one who started this debate in the first place, Reggie Bush. This was one that got passed around. This is one that people sought out on DVDs. Like, I had a DVD copy of that. Helix High School in San Diego. You saw everything that you were going to see at USC. The speed, the power, the precision, the receiving ability. Everything that Reggie Bush was about to become at USC, you could see in this highlight tape. And it was awesome. Just absolutely awesome. And again, this is one, like, if you were like me and lived on the East Coast and you got to see this, it was like magic. Because where would you have seen that otherwise? TV shows, there were a couple of recruiting TV shows, but not really. And they were very regional. Y'all don't know how good you have it, you youngsters. I hate to go old man. That's what we had in my day. We liked it. I hate to do that. But y'all have no clue how good you have it. Being able to pop on a huddle clip and seeing everybody who play. Like, you look at the rankings. If you go to On3's rankings right now, we have clips embedded where you can watch video of all these guys in the class of 25, class of 26. We had nothing like that back then. Nothing. That brings us number one. And I couldn't find the one that was the most popular one back when Jadeveon Clowney was a recruit, because that one started with him returning a kickoff. And Jadeveon Clowney is a high schooler at South Point High School in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Jadeveon Clowney was about the size he was at South Carolina. He got a little bit bigger at South Carolina. A little bit bigger. But he was about that size already. And so there are obviously clips of him sacking quarterbacks. He was always going to be an edge rusher. That was always the plan. But South Point used him as a running back. They used him as a kick returner. So there's a play on his highlight tape where I believe it's like a 90-yard touchdown run. But then there's also the one, I believe a state championship game. It's played at Williams-Brice Stadium where he's playing Everett Golson's team and he's just ragdolling Everett Golson. It was like, this is the scariest human being I've ever seen in my life. You could never block this guy and you could never tackle this guy. And so when he hit Vincent Smith in the Outback Bowl, everybody who watched this highlight tape 5 million times was like, yep, saw that coming. Jadeveon Clowney is your number one high school highlight tape. Again, if you want to go with Reggie Bush or Noel Devine, I'm open to the arguments, but man, that dude, you just can't believe that someone who's 16, 17 years old can do any of this stuff. And Jadeveon Clowney did all of that stuff. It was amazing. Thank you so much for watching. Just a reminder, subscribe to this channel right here so you never miss an episode of Andy Staples On 3. And oh, by the way, watch all the other great videos on the On3 Sports YouTube channel.